Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Tommy, aka T-Rex, and today we are going to be reviewing the new album by Aminé titled Limbo. Now, this is Aminé's third album, and it's been long awaited by fans, and honestly, I had kind of forgotten about Aminé in general until I heard that this thing dropped, and when I did hear it, I was pretty excited to check it out. So this album started off really strong with the track Burden, and it features this sample from Durando's Thank You God that I think is pretty much used in the entire beat, and I really enjoy it. Just really hits you, especially that vocal sample is really good. I mean, this track just has this funky bass line. It's really easy to vibe to, and Aminé's rapping on this thing is really good. He just flows and goes after it, and the hook is a little more laid back, but still enjoyable and kind of lets the beat and the instrumental here just take over and really carry the hook, and then he gets right back into the rapping, and man, this song is a really strong start. And next up, we have the track Woodlawn that has really great production from Young Lan here, heavily featuring this flute sample and these very thick 808s. Aminé is just on this track, just, talking his shit, talking about how he came a long way from his hometown and how he's doing big things now. And it's just a really good party and just a positive vibe, like, hey, I made it type of anthem. And the third track here, Kobe, is just a little interlude that is a little tribute to Kobe that references back to a line in Woodlawn where Aminé says R.I.P. Kobe. And not really much to say about it, but indeed, R.I.P. Kobe. And then we move on to the track Roots, which features a great verse from JID and some really beautiful vocals from Charlie Wilson as well. And this thing just has a really great beat that you can just kind of chill out to. It's nothing too in your face, a little more laid back this time. I really like Aminé's verses on this thing, especially when he says, if being ugly was pretty, I'd be the shit. Because I can really identify with that. And then we move on to the track Can't Decide, and while this isn't really my favorite track on the album, this is where he kind of starts to introduce the idea and the overall theme of this album, at least in my opinion, and I mean by the title of the album, this sort of idea of being in limbo, where he kind of talks about his relationship or past relationships and how he's not really sure where they're at, he's not really sure what she wants, he's not necessarily even really sure what he wants, and there's just sort of this limbo that he's kind of stuck in, and it's a painful spot to be, and he'll continue to discover this theme over and over again throughout the album. Which brings me to the next song, Compensating, featuring probably the best feature, in my opinion, here from Young Thug. It's just got this great beat from T- with an infectious sort of bounce to it, and here we really see Aminé start to get into this idea of being in limbo, along with the help of Young Thug, where he's talking about just his feelings on a broken relationship and how he messed up. He sort of made his bed and he wants to do better. But he also seems like, in a way, he's kind of started to come to accept it when he says on the refrain, but I'ma always wish you the best. Overall, this track is definitely a standout for me, but I also really like Young Thug, and that definitely helps. But I think this is definitely one of the most interesting, entertaining, and fun beats that we have on the entire album. And then we move on to the track Shimmy, which has this super aggressive and just menacing beat, and Aminé just kind of goes off on his verses, just taking out his energy on this thing, and it features this old Dirty Bastard sample to kind of back him up that he then kind of pays tribute to throughout the song as well. And then we move on to the song Pressure in My Palms, and when I saw this track come on and I saw that it featured Vince Staples and I started to hear the beat, I was like, man, this beat was made for Vince Staples. And then when Aminé started rapping, for a second I actually thought it was Vince Staples, because it's almost like Aminé's doing his best Vince Staples impression. Maybe I'm wrong there, but that's kind of how it feels like. But this is another pretty aggressive and dark beat with this really groovy and quick bass line. And I mean, the verses here from both Aminé and Vince Staples are really good, and this one's also definitely a standout for me. And then we move on to the track Riri, where we have these smutty 808s and this stellar hook where Aminé is exclaiming that his girl broke his heart 3 times, which obviously I'm butchering that, but he sings it way better than me, so if you haven't heard it, check it out. That hook is definitely a standout for me on this song, and really on the entire album as well. And then we really have Aminé here delving more into the idea of being in limbo in his relationship or past relationships. At the end of his second verse saying, stuck in limbo for how long? Please tell me where I belong. Next we have the song Easy, which is a pretty groovy little R&B jam featuring Summer Walker that honestly would probably not really do it for me if it wasn't for the hook, but their harmonizing and singing on the hook is really good. It just hits me inside in the chest, in the heart. But, if it wasn't for that hook, I probably wouldn't be too in love with the song overall. It's kind of a little bit slow, especially on the slow end for this album in particular, but that hook really makes up for it in my opinion and really makes the song one that did really stand out for me, and it is one of my favorites. And then we move on to the song Mama, which is a really sweet tribute to Aminé's mom and how much he loves her and how awesome he thinks she is. This definitely bears a resemblance to Kanye West's Hey Mama as well as Tupac's Dear Mama, and he definitely references both of those tracks in there, so I think he definitely drew quite a bit of inspiration from both of those songs. The only criticism I could really give for this particular track is that the hook feels a little bit on the uninspired side. It's basically just him repeating Mama over and over again, which it doesn't sound bad, but it's just a little on the uninspired side of things, in my opinion. But the pre-chorus and the rest of the entire song makes up for it, in my opinion, and I still really enjoy this track. And then we move on to the track Becky, and this is where I feel like the album sort of starts to take a little bit of a downward slope and get a little less interesting, the beats a little less fun to listen to. I do find the content of this track interesting, with Aminé sort of talking about the struggles of being a black man in a relationship with a white woman and seeing how people look at you and how it causes divisions amongst your families and friend groups and stuff like that. It's definitely interesting, but the instrumentation and the beat is just a little bit on the boring side, and it makes the track a little bit of a slog to get through. And then we move on to the track Fetus, and like I said, at this point the album is on a little bit of a downward spiral for me. I do find this track to also be a little bit underwhelming. There's just a lot going on with the beat, and it kind of takes away from the lyrics here. When I saw this feature from Injury Reserve, I was really excited because I do really enjoy Injury Reserve, but the verse that Steppa J. Groggs and Richie with a T shared was pretty boring, as well as Aminé's verse, and yeah, this track just didn't really do it for me. And then the final track, My Reality, continues the trend of the previous two tracks, and again, the beat here is just a little too cluttery. There's just too many sounds going on all in the same moment, and it just seems to me like Aminé could have done a better job ending the album here. Now, while this album had a pretty weak ending for me in the final 3 tracks of a 14-track album, I honestly can say I really, really enjoyed this album a lot. I really love it. I mean, besides those last 3 tracks, everything from the first track, Burden, all the way through Mama, I really, really enjoy all of these tracks. I think Aminé did a fantastic job with this thing. I think maybe the only thing he really could have fixed was keeping me gripped and into the music all the way through, instead of sort of starting to falter towards those last 3. And while those last 3 tracks are not my favorite on this thing, they're by no means terrible, right? I've definitely heard way worse music from way worse rappers, or even from better rappers, to be honest. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this thing. I really enjoyed this theme and this concept of him being stuck in limbo in his relationships, and I think Aminé kind of knocked this one out of the park. So, as this is the first album that I am officially reviewing on the channel, I should set up a rating scale so that we can actually rate this thing. And I'm a firm believer that I don't like rating things unless I give reasons why. That's why I'm making videos for it. I don't want to type it out and post it on a tweet longer or post it on Facebook or whatever. I want to really share my opinions with you guys and let you know how I felt about each track and then on the overall album. So honestly, I know everybody does it. It's kind of the best rating scale, but in spite of everybody doing it, it is the best rating scale, so I'm going to go with a rating scale of 1 through 10. Now, a lot of people, I think, have misconceptions on how a rating scale of 1 through 10 works. A lot of people would look at a 5 and say, wow, they really hated this album. That's not how I look at it. I would look at a 5 and say that's the exact average, right? That's mediocrity. It's not terrible. It's not amazing. It's just right in the middle. So with that being said, I will be giving Limbo by Aminé. I'm feeling an 8 out of 10 on this thing. I really enjoyed 80% of this album. I'll probably keep most of these songs on my playlist for the very, very, very foreseeable future. I mean that to say quite a while. So yeah, what should I review next? Let me know in the comments, guys, and I'll see you next time. Peace.